Hello, on today's Biohack Your Pets podcast, we are honored to have Amanda Ray of Sama Dog Wellness here. She teaches Ayurvedic health for pets, which I just find so super cool. She's also a certified meditation teacher, 500-hour yoga hatha instructor, and Ayurvedic health practitioner. She was born with an innate soul connection to animals, and through her childhood, she worked at her family's Lake Tahoe pet store, where she developed an especially deep bond with dogs. I understand. I used to be a cat person, but now I don't know. I can't even pick. Her her spiritual studies started at the, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Sivananda Yoga
Close. Mm-hmm.
Vedanta Center, and in 2006, she began working with and studying directly with Dr. Deepak Chopra. As a lead educator, event host, and vice president of the Chopra Center, Amanda gleaned wisdom from many of the world's top leaders and experts in health and well-being. Conscious living and Amanda's passion for dogs merged in 2016 with the creation of her company, Sama Dog, Wellbeing for dogs and their humans, education, products, and services for canine companions to find balance, or in other words, Sama, by incorporating holistic care inspired by Ayurveda. I'm pronouncing Ayurveda correct? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, close. It's Ayurveda. I will often teach that to people just right off the bat because it is a foreign word and none of us really know how it flows. So I always I'll point to my eyes, I, then point to you, your Veda. Ayurveda.
Got it. And Veda is like life or?
Yeah, wisdom.
Yes?
Yeah, wisdom, life, or it could be science.
It's similar to in Spanish, right? Vida. So living la vida loca.
Yeah. I never thought about that, but that's totally true.
So that is awesome. It's something that I actually, here in Salt Springs, we have the Amaret Yoga Institute here in Florida. And I went there just one time for a weekend kind of reset, and they have a PhD program in Ayurveda, and I was like all reading all the stuff about it and like, Jessica, you're already a vet, you're already a doctor, you don't need to be another doctor, like you just need to serve the world. You can learn everything, learn things, yes, that's good, but like you don't have to go to every school that there is. But man, it sounded so cool. So I'm super excited to ask you all kinds of questions about it, and especially how you use it in pets, because I don't think anybody else in the whole world is doing that. So thank you for putting it together like that. I do acupuncture. So I've studied Chinese medicine, which has its own personality or constitutions, we call them, right? So earth, fire, water, wood, metal. And so there's 5. It's a little bit different though. You only have 3. So my first question is, can you explain the doshas? I think a lot of people have seen them in fitness magazines and you see the different shapes of people and stuff, but can you explain them again? And then a little bit of how they would apply to dogs.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's a great place to start. And I just want to mention or let's say encourage you. I might have a biased opinion, but we need more Ayurvedic vets in this world. There's really only a few. So not that I want to send you back to school, but if you're even a little bit interested, I think that would be something really good to explore for you, because you obviously are right in alignment with all of this work. And as mentioned, this is a new old system that's being woven into the West, and it's a powerful system. So I can explain a little bit about it. As you mentioned, Veda, so just kind of starting with the word, I think that's always a good place, is Veda is life or wisdom or science. And the first part of the word Ayu or Ayus is life. So it's life's science, life's wisdom. And what Ayurveda kind of has as a foundation of its teachings are these personality types, you could see them as, or constitutions, known as the doshas. So that's D-O-S-H-A for our visual types. And there are in fact 3 doshas, like you mentioned, but actually there are 5 elements that Ayurveda really talks about and looks to. Slightly different than traditional Chinese medicine. Ayurveda has the 5 elements of space, air, fire, water, and earth. And those 5 elements pair up to create each of the doshas. And so these doshas are, as mentioned, constitutions, or I like to call them like mind, body, personalities. And I think all of us know at some level the doshas and we don't even realize it. We know, and especially in just kind of context of dogs, that a German Shepherd versus a Golden Retriever is so very different in their personality, their body, their mental capacity, their emotions, the way they connect with you, and so much more. There are also, those two breeds are very different than a Bulldog, are very different than a Chihuahua, are very different than an Afghan. Mm-hmm. So when we see, as we come to know breeds and as we come to know dogs, we come to see, and same for people actually too, we come to see that there's different personality types, and we in our own mind are kind of categorizing these anyway. And what Ayurveda brings us is a way to categorize based on the biology and the physiology and the emotional, so the body, mind, and even the spirit side. And how does that come together in our animal's body? And why does it help us to know that? So let me be a little bit more specific. In the three doshas, there are vata, pitta, and kapha. So when we're looking at vata, V-A-T-A, that dosha is the combination of the elements of air and water. Air and space, air and space. So when air and space come together, there's like a lightness and a mobility and a flexibility. Just kind of think of the wind. So how does the wind or air show up in an animal? And that's where sometimes people can get a little confused by Ayurveda. But what it does is, in an animal, when in balance, that airiness creates a lightness, a fun, outgoing, joyful, playful kind of energy, very easygoing, life of the party, very adaptable, friendly. And
I'm thinking your typical border collie.
Yeah, well, yes. However, when we get into the other doshas, you'll see the border collie a little bit more. When we're looking at breeds, we're looking more like greyhounds, Afghans, standard poodles, these dogs that are kind of like light and happy and easy, but yet when out of balance, that's even more so when you can see how an animal is imbalanced, is when out of balance, you can accumulate, in this case, too much air. And so what does that look like when it's in an animal? Well, that creates anxiousness and an ungroundedness, fearful, uneasy, reactive. So basically that airiness that's in our very fidgety, ungrounded, nervous animals, we can help to bring down to earth. So we create a little more of that balance in the air by bringing them down and getting them a little bit heavier, a little more solid, a little more grounded. So that is kind of the idea of Ayurveda, is when we can interpret our animal's dosha, that mind, body, personality type, we can then know what to look out for and what to be aware of when it comes to all the choices that we make for them, because those choices keep them in balance or unknowingly bring them out of balance. So to give you an example, with an airy type dog, we don't want to feed them light and dry food, because what'll happen? They'll like float away, right? And they won't have that solidity that they need. And that can actually make their anxiety and things of that nature even worse. So that's kind of how the idea overall works. We'll get into the other two doshas as well. But overall, we get to know what their dosha is. We get to then make choices, whether it's through their food or through their the way we talk with them or interact with them or train them, or whether it's the supplements that we choose or their daily routine and exercise, or even their bed and their collar and the aromas and the environment that create for them. All of those aspects that are influencing our animals' lives are actually our choices. And when we make certain choices that bring more balance, we can see our animal thrive.
So is there ever a situation where, that brings up this question, that your dog's dosha would conflict with your own or someone else in your family? So the bed, the aromas in the air, they can't necessarily be the same for everyone, but everyone living in the home is going to be exposed to those same sets of environmental factors.
Totally. Yeah, great question. And what we look to is where there's imbalance. And that's where we actually end up talking a lot about the imbalance, how are we seeing it expressed, either in, like in the vata example, in nervousness, and then we'll talk about the others. But those either physical or emotional responses, how are they being influenced by their environment? And so when we notice when one of our animals is out of balance, that's when we can make certain choices, back to your question of aroma, that would help bring them back into balance. And so the other animals in the house, yes, would be influenced by it, but they might not have that imbalance going on. So really it's just going to be working mostly on the animal that needs it most. Otherwise it's just balancing because that animal is already pretty balanced in its own right. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep, that makes sense. So these aromatherapy techniques are a little bit more like what I would consider, and you probably talk about this as well, because Ayurveda is very much uses a lot of herbs, and I know that adaptogenic herbs are a pretty common thing that Ayurvedic doctors use, like ashwagandha, for example.
Exactly.
And turmeric. Those are very adaptogenic herbs that are heavily used in this type of medicine, and are great with most pets. Most of the time, pretty much everyone can benefit from those things.
Exactly.
So the aromatherapy kind of works in that same way. That's something that I haven't used a ton of. I haven't really studied aromatherapy. So thank you for answering that question. I appreciate that.
But that's a great example, actually, what you shared with the herbs. You could give anybody, really, ashwagandha, let's use that as our example. That's a great stress-reducing herb. And ideal, by the way, for our vata dogs that we just talked about. If your dog is ungrounded and nervous and very fearful like that, then really getting them, again, back into their body, back onto the earth. And that's what ashwagandha is really good at. But that's a perfect example, because if you gave ashwagandha to another animal that wasn't necessarily ungrounded, they'd still receive all the benefits that that herb has to offer. It will just have, let's say, an extra benefit for those that need it most.
Yep, that makes sense. Yep, absolutely. Okay, so we talked about vata. What about pitta?
So pitta is the next one, Pitta. That's the second of the doshas. There's no specific order. They just are existent in us. And it's important to take a pause here and share with all of our listeners that all of us, whether we're a human, a cat, a bird, a plant, or a dog, we all have all three doshas in us. We just have more typically of one or two than, all three. Some people do have all three pretty in balance and within their constitution, but most of us have one or two predominant. And that's where we when we learn that about our animal, that's how we then get to make those choices that bring them or keep them in balance. So coming to pitta, that is a combination of the two elements that are fire and water. So when those two come together, they create energy, right? And light and brightness. And so in a dog, when in balance, that's a very engaged animal, very athletic, smart, loves to work, wants a job, wants to really pay attention and listen, very keen intellect. So that fiery nature that kind of shines from within them, it just like comes out through their being, right? Through their personality even, and is very magnetic. Just like we stare at a fire, if we see a candle or a campfire, we like stare at it, right? Because the fire is magnetic. So these animals, these beings are very attractive. And yet when that fire becomes too strong, what happens when even a volcano erupts, it becomes very intense, reactive.
So we're talking about German Shepherds here.
Yes, we are. Yep. Aggressive, irritable, unpredictable. So like all of your working breeds really fall into the pitta category for the most part. And so all the shepherds, terriers, I've got a little Jack Russell mix and he's as pitta as they come. And as you mentioned, cattle dogs. Very good example. They just want to work. They love agility. They will go crazy if you don't give them that outlet for the burning. Like think of a fire, a campfire again. If you don't feed it, it smolders, right? And it starts to go out. And this being needs that fire. That's who they are. So you need to feed it. So pitta people also want to consume a lot of information. They're usually leaders and very charismatic actors and actresses, people that like to be on a stage. So their dogs are kind of the same way. You know, they like to be very present and be active and useful. And yet when out of balance, that heat can really scorch the village, as they say in Ayurveda.
Okay, and then the next one?
So the third dosha is kapha, Kapha. And that is a combination, that dosha is a combination of earth and water. So what do we get when we bring earth and water together? Like mud, right? So you kind of have those same qualities there. It's very slow and stable, grounded, easy, consistent. So in an animal, this energy of kapha comes through in a dog as loyal, easygoing, low maintenance, very lovable, simple dogs, you know, not a lot of drama, don't need a whole lot of bells and whistles, you could say. But when out of balance, when there's too much earth, what happens? You start to get too heavy. They can become overweight, withdrawn, lazy, grumpy, possessive, because they just start to, you know, like us, when we get in kind of the winter blues, you can kind of see that as the energy of kapha. We just want to get in bed and like pull the sheets up over our head and hang out there and just get away from everyone. Well, that's the same energy of kapha. Most often in dogs, we'll see it with weight gain. But stagnation in general, I think of that muddiness that I mentioned. So anytime there's like stickiness, like in their mouth and their ears, even in their gut, when there's a lot of kapha represents the fluids in the body with the water and earth. And so anytime there's a lot of like pus, or I know it sounds gross, but like goo, snot, all of that.
That makes me think of Cocker Spaniels.
Yes, they're a perfect example of kapha. Think of their ears.
Like goopy,
always
excess,
goopy.
sebum. Yes.
Yeah. They always get a lot of yeast problems, kapha. You know, you can even think of like that. If you picked up a rock outside, right, that has like a muddiness under it, and the moist air or the moist earth, you'll see like a little fungus. It's a little stinky. All of that is very much the qualities of kapha.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't mention in dogs, just to give the breed, so we keep it rounded. Sorry to cut you off there, but we've got, you mentioned your Cocker Spaniels, Golden Retrievers, a lot of Labs. I have a beautiful kapha here, a Bernese Mountain Dog mix. So she's like as mellow as they come. Pugs.
Aww.
You know, pugs are a great example. King Charles Cavalier Spaniel. We just watched one of them the other day. We have boarding here at our home, and we had King Charles stay for a week, and he was super kapha, easy guy. So yeah, that's the energy of that dosha.
So I can see, I mean, obviously there's going to be variation. A Labrador is typically like that, but I think of more of the English Lab, the ones that tend to be a little bit shorter, a little bit heavier, a little bit squarer. The American Labs have really been bred to be working dogs, and a lot of times are more, they're probably like a 50-50 mix. They really need that work, but they don't tend to have quite as much of the fire as like the other working dogs that you think of, like a German Shepherd or a Malinois or something like that. But it's so fun. This part is just so fun. I love doing this with, you know, the Chinese medicine constitutions as well. Yeah. And it's just fun to think about it for ourselves as well. I mean, I don't even know what I am. It's really hard to pick. There must be some sort of longer test or evaluation that you can have.
Yeah, there is. I have one for dogs that people can find at samadog.com/quiz. So you can go through and take, like, it takes about 3 minutes. You answer all the questions there and it tells you your dogs. But the Chopra, who I come through, as you know, my great teacher, Dr. Deepak Chopra, on their site, chopra.com, they have a really good quiz. They just updated it and made it even better for humans. So you can go through, take that, it'll spit out your answers, and it will show you what your predominant dosha is. But yes, as a reminder, all of us have all three. And that's why I always tell people not to judge a dog by their cover, you know, not to judge it by their breed, because you know, there's plenty of labs that are also very vata. They're a little bit skittish, you know, they're a little ungrounded, they get anxious, they they kind of lose themselves. Like I think of my vata dog when she fetches her ball. She goes like right, left. Then the ball like bounces in the tree and she like jumps to the back of the tree. She jumps on the tree. Where a pitta dog, when it is going after the ball, it just sees exactly where it goes. It makes a straight line for the ball and a straight line back. So you kind of can see even in that one little behavior, how different that lighter energy is. So you can see that, you know, labs can certainly have that. I mean, my Bernese mountain dog, although she is very kapha energy, that earthier energy, her mind is more vata. She's very fearful. She's got a lot of triggered anxieties. She's not the most outgoing girl in the world. She's, you know, she won't go up to strangers very easily. So there's a lot of that vata energy there too. So that's how you kind of, I call it like getting Ayurvedic goggles. So you can start to like see the doshas present in life around us.
Yeah, like you said, we all have all of them, and that makes a lot of sense. And it's funny because I've been talking to people about German Shepherds in particular recently. For some reason, this just keeps coming up. My parents used to raise German Shepherds when I was really little, actually in Northern California. I was born in Santa Rosa, so closer to where you grew up, but now I'm in Florida, but I think you know that, right? But, so the German Shepherds are really interesting. You'll have 3 different types, which is so fitting with these. I keep saying you have the really skittish ones who are just scared of their own shadow. You can barely even get near them and touch them, and they will bite out of fear, and they just are just like so scared of everything all the time, and they only really act aggressive because they're scared. Then you have the ones that are just you know, aggressive, but because they're a guard dog and that's what they've been bred or trained to do, but they're really bold. Or they're cool, but they're bold. You know, they're working dogs, the police dogs, you know, and those dogs are great. I'll take them all day because at least they're trained, right? And then you have just the super cool ones that couldn't actually do the job because they actually won't attack anyone. And that's how our German Shepherd was when I grew up. My dad tried to have him Schitzen trained, and he's like, he might lick someone to death. I mean, this dog is not going to attack anyone for any reason. And he would babysit me. He would keep me on my blanket out in the yard and just lick me back into the middle if I ever tried to like crawl off. But he was very laid back, very cool, that big, like big, thick neck, thick head, neat, like super like just dude dog that you see in some German Shepherds, and they'll lay their head on you and they just have that tongue out love. And that I find is a little bit more rare, but I would say, you know, it's more kapha feeling, but still with the pitta, because of course they're working dogs, right? And I find myself to be somewhere between like a pizza. So let's talk about imbalances a little bit. I think that will be really enlightening for a lot of people. So for me, I love learning new things. So I love new projects. I do enjoy being on stage. I love having this podcast, you know, and having this platform to be able to share my knowledge and your knowledge. And so I think that's very pizza, right? I mean, that seems like it to me. And I can be very athletic, but I also gain weight very easily. So my imbalance would shift towards the kapha side where I get stagnant. It's easy for me to become stagnant physically in my body. So I have to work very hard and I enjoy being physically fit, and I do work hard at it when I'm in balance. Right now I'm a little out of balance from the COVID, but we'll get it back. I'm ready. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, what are the specific imbalances? You did talk about that with the vata, but maybe with the other two as well.
Yeah, with the pitta, that is where the imbalance really looks like an accumulation of the heat. So whether it's in the mind, like aggressive, reactive, overly intense, like my little Jack Russell mix, when he gets pitta imbalanced, which, you know, can happen anytime.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Yep. Repeat that. I think we had a little break in it. Hopefully we can edit that out.
Yeah, I see that here too. Yeah, so my little pitta dog, my Jack Russell that I mentioned, he is, when imbalanced, great at ball fetching and super, super athletic little guy. Also, you know, loves eye contact, very connected to me. Like he knows the utterances that I will make in like my breath, and he will be able to detect it. So that pitta energy just keeps him very sharp and in tune. Like you said, you love to learn things and engage, and that's what that energy does. But when out of balance, their personality can get aggressive, as mentioned, but also they can just get intense, where you might notice, like with my guy, he starts barking at everything, like not just, at passerbys, but if his ball gets stuck in a little crevice, say, he'll bark. And it's like this very intense, like shrill, angry, like if he had a voice, he would just be like, God darn it, that ball's stuck. You could imagine, like, instead of like, hey mom, will you come over here and get my ball? It's stuck, which he normally says. Instead, you could like pick up on that, like, I'm mad right now. And so you'll find when another dog, just to go with that same example of the ball play, another dog will come up and sniff around that ball, and he'll like really bite at that dog, or, snap at that dog to tell him, get away from my ball. And so you just, as soon as I witness this behavior, which he does not have on the regular, he's always a very engaging ball player, but that kind of behavior, I immediately know that his heat is too high. His fire has accumulated, and I need to do things, take steps to cool the fire within him. And that's where things really get interesting, because you can do that, as Ayurveda guides us, through the 5 senses. So through our food and herbs and liquids, but also through, as we mentioned, aromas, but through just as much through sight, what they're seeing, what they're looking at, what they're hearing, the sounds in the environment, or even music and, purposeful sounds. Even like an example of pitta, try to bring in cooling messages and information. So when we're talking about sound, bringing in the sound of water, even like that is a sound too. When we think of sound, we think of music or horns honking, but even the sound of like water constantly trickling in your home, even if it's through your computer that's making the sound, that kind of energy, especially an animal, which we all are, of course, but dogs being even a little bit more obvious with that, are very connected to the earth's elements. And that sound of water is going to cool down that fire inside your dog. And that's how Ayurveda works. So it's through the energy principles and the way that they affect us. So that's pitta when they're out of balance. And then kapha, that was that earthy element, when they're out of balance, as mentioned, overweight, all the problems that we said, like all the stickiness, the congestion, even like congestive hearts, a lot of just very slow digestion, slow energy, just, don't want to go for a walk, doesn't really want to move around the house much. When food is around, they're very possessive of that food. And so you really start to see them just like turn into a formation, like become more heavy and inert. And that is when we want to bring in this case, lighter, energizing things. So whether it's food, whether it's aroma, whether it's sounds, whether it's even touch, if you're giving your dog a massage and they have kapha, then you want to give them like a quick stroke massages. Even if it's just a simple pet in the morning, you want to like pet on their ears and like get to the base of the ears and kind of rub back and forth and rub down their sides and kind of make that kind of back and forth on their feet. And you want to like stimulate their body, and they'll like that. It'll start to wake them up. And the next thing you know, they are ready to go for that walk, when 2 minutes ago they were very tucked away in their dog bed.
I just interviewed Dr. Tori Counter about gua sha, which is a massage technique where you make short strokes with a crystal, or like rose quartz, or the green one. Shoot, it's gonna blank on me.
Fluorite?
It's a Chinese jade.
Oh, jade.
Yep. So they use a lot of jade, and So, and she's a vet. You can find her on Instagram at the Balanced Pet Vet. I think she's in Southern California. Are you still in Northern California?
Yeah, we're in Southern.
You're in Southern. Awesome. Okay, fun. So you could connect. But the gua sha sounds like it would be really good for those types of dogs, and that's something that pet owners can do. Once they kind of learn a little bit about it, they can do themselves, which is what another thing I really loved about it, because I just really want to be able to empower pet owners to help their pets on their own. I mean, yes, of course, veterinarians are very, very important, but that being said, you are there with your pet every single day. You see them more than we do, and they are going to be with you. Like, we cannot do daily treatments for them. You can. And so, educating yourself through this podcast and through other resources, and having consultations with wellness experts like yourself or myself, depending on the situation, can help guide you. But ultimately, it's all in your hands. You know what I mean? Like, their well-being is in your hands. Their well-being is in your home. So I'm here to empower pet parents to be able to do a lot of things on their own, and teach acupressure a little bit. But the gua sha is really good. And your quiz would definitely help people to guide. So I'm going to put that in the show notes. I'm definitely going to put that link in the show notes. If you want to go and take this dosha quiz for your dog, we'll do that. And then if you are feeling like your pet is having a lot of imbalances, a consultation with some of the simple things that you can change, like the sounds, the smells, the activities, could really be empowering, could really, really be helpful. So that is really exciting. I love what you're doing. Another thing that I noticed and I wanted to ask you about on your website and on your Instagram at Sama Dog Wellness is the supplements. So you have your own line of supplements. Is that correct?
We do. We have a few select products that are dosha balancing. So making it a little bit easier for people. Once they know what the dosha is, then they can choose from those. So right now we have biscuits. And they're human grade, vegan, all organic. They're really great. Now, I'm not a proponent, just pausing there, of vegan diets for dogs, but it is nice when we bring in other treats and other foods, just to be able to offer something so clean, fresh, and healthy. And we bake them here in San Diego at a local baker, so they're literally like small batched. And they have, speaking of the herb that you mentioned earlier, ashwagandha, that we said was for calming, relaxing, helping a dog to just really give them what they need, so to speak, as adaptogens do. That herb is in all of the biscuits, just a little bit, but it's in there. So it really helps them, and dogs are crazy about these biscuits. And then we have like an elixir that's a base oil that is for the dosha. Then it has flower essences for the mind that are for the dosha. So everything that we do and everything in Ayurveda is incorporating body, mind, spirit, and environment. And so that is what is so unique about Ayurveda. And I just love what you said about empowering human companions to be able to help their animals stay in balance, because we see it. We know that we've seen these imbalances far ahead. And if we let it go, say my dog that gets barky and growly and snappy, right, with his ball, if we notice that and just say, oh, he's kind of intense today, and then we notice it another week and another week, what's the next thing we notice? Now they either have a problem behavior, like with their personality, and we need to work that, right? Or they start to get a rash, or they start to get inflammation in their gut and some digestive issues. Those are all still the heat. So the heat has basically moved from the mind into the body. And now there's symptoms starting to come out that are more obvious. So back to what you said is empowering human companions. When we're the front lines, like you said, we're seeing them every day. We notice those subtle differences. And when we do, now Ayurveda gives us this whole tool set that we get to pull from and bring into our dog's life to, within a day or two, bring them back into balance, depending on what's going on. And then we can avoid all of those accumulative diseases and problems that come through with time.
Yep.
Human companions, when we're the front lines, like you said, we're seeing them every day. We notice those subtle differences. And when we do, now Ayurveda gives us this whole tool set that we get to pull from and bring into our dog's life to, within a day or two, bring them back into balance, depending on what's going on. And then we can avoid all of those accumulative diseases and problems that come through with time.
Yep.
You broke up.
This is all about. This is a biohack, right? So just paying attention ahead of time. Saying that
You're broken up. Very broken.
What this is all about, this podcast, understanding the dosha, and then whether it be foods. I'm going to pause it. And Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can.
Okay, good. I was saying that this Ayurvedic medicine and this evaluation and consultation that you offer is a biohacking tool. This is Biohack Your Pets, right? So we want to biohack them in the sense that we want to do safe, of course. Not some biohacking is a little bit like on the fringes, right? For people try all kinds of crazy things. But what I mean by it is we want to hack our pet's biology. And honestly, it's not just the biology, right? It's the spirit too. So that's getting a little bit more on the woo side, but that's okay because we love that here. It's the spirit, it's the dosha, it's the whole thing. You want to hack that. You want to understand it and do everything you can to keep it healthy before it ever gets out of balance, right?
Yeah.
So are there things that so even when they're not out of balance, so you mentioned a few things for each different dosha that would show you that they're out of balance, and then things that you can do to rebalance them. But are there things that you recommend for each type of dosha to do even when they aren't out of balance, just to keep them balanced longer?
Exactly. That's exactly it. You've got it. See, you're a natural Ayurvedic doctor. So I just want to encourage that one more time.
Thank you.
I'm running a campaign over here. Because that's exactly it. Yes. And when we know our dog's dosha, once we identify that, then we are able to know how to make the choices. Let's just say food. That becomes like the easiest kind of first step with our dogs. So to be specific, vatas, that airy energy, you want to bring warm, moist, and oily food. And that's on the daily. And so not that a vata dog couldn't eat raw, but maybe choosing a meat source, a protein source that is a warming meat versus a cooling meat. So these all get into the nuances, but that's that. And then when a vata dog is out of balance and there's too much of that lightness and coldness, sometimes raw at that moment might not be the best thing for them. So then you just warm that up a little bit, because basically the air is always cold and dry. So again, warm, moist, and oily. That's the mantra I always guide everybody with for vata dogs. So every day, every meal, you would just kind of lean that direction. And then just to give a specific, like beef is a good option for vata because it's a good neutral meat. It's grounding. It's neutral in its temperature, as you know from your traditional Chinese medicine. And Ayurveda even goes as far to say, looking at the energy of that animal. So a cow is a big, heavy, slow, grounded creature. So if you've got a nervous Nelly dog, feed them something that is going to get them rooted more. And that beef energy can do that. So this is into the subtleties. So pitta, generally speaking, let's just kind of stay on food to give some specific guidance. You want to cool down the fire. So whether your animal is out of balance or not, if they're pitta dosha, you want to every day, every meal, keep that in mind. Cooling energy. So you could choose a cooling meat like a duck. That's a good one. Or rabbit. Those are both cooling. Or you could choose cooling vegetables like cucumbers, parsley, then fruits like apples and bananas, both very cooling. Aloe is cooling. You've got several herbs that'll bring temperature down. Even like yogurts. That's why even like in Indian food, when it's really spicy, they'll put the raita on top, right? Like that yogurt to like cool all the spices because it's that cooling stuff. Energy. Yeah, me too. I love it.
It actually has cucumber in it too.
It does, because the intention of that ingredient, of that condiment, is to cool the meal and to bring the balance in your body so that you can digest it better. So the same thing. So give your dog a little raita. You actually could. I should make that. That should be one of my next products. It would be great.
Raita for pizza.
Yeah. Dogs could benefit so much from that. And so that's the idea. Keep it cool. But raw food for a pitta dog, if they're in balance, is great because that fire in their belly is strong. Think back to the bonfire. You can throw some meat on there and it'll cook it just fine. So that's the energy of pitta. And then kapha, when it comes to food, whether they're in balance or not, you're wanting to keep the lightness in general. So that dog, that kapha dog, you don't really want to feed a bunch of beef to that dog, because it's going to, again, bring that very heavy energy there. And if they do happen to have an imbalance, then you'll push them further that way. Like attracts like when it comes to the elements. And so when we're working with a heavier energied animal like that, we want to bring light. So like turkey is a good option when we're speaking of protein specifically choices.
I would think fish.
Yeah,
too.
Fish, totally. And, they're very light little creatures that, even if you want to diet yourself, dietitians will often guide you toward fish because it's a lighter food, less calories, less heaviness. And then with kaphas, we want to favor basically green leafies, all vegetables in general. Just like a kapha person, if you're looking to lose weight, you're going to start eating a lot more veggies, right? You're going to eat a lot more salads. So for our dogs, we just want to make sure they're minced so they can digest them. But green beans, Brussels sprouts, celery, even ginger, really stimulating and great for the digestive system of a kapha.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. That's really good. That's good guidance. And it's very much in alignment with or agreement with my traditional Chinese veterinary food therapy, which I use to formulate diets for my patients and for my clients. I wanted to ask again about your supplements because I noticed that they have goji berries in them. And that is something that in food therapy is highly recommended, at least by Dr. Shea, who runs the Chi Institute here where I studied acupuncture and food therapy. And unfortunately, it's not a food that we regularly eat here in America. So it's not something that you can readily find fresh, right? In the grocery store. So you could probably buy dried ones, but I'm not sure how many dogs would enjoy them as much as they need them. So I love that that's in your treats because it is recommended for so many different imbalances in food therapy. So what do you use them for? I noticed that it is in 2 of the products and not in 1. Can you explain that?
Yeah, actually, you're speaking of the biscuits, and we actually have 2 varieties of our biscuits, and then one of them is a combo. So vatas have the combo because they sometimes it's always changing. Vatas, the air, think of how easily the air takes new form, right? So vatas one day are balanced, the next day not. Speaking as a vata pitta person, one day I'm like, I got this life thing. And the next thing I'm like, everything's falling apart. And so it's kind of like the vata way. And so that's why they have like the variety pack for their biscuits. So the pittas have the cooling energy in there. So they've got like turmeric and peanut butter and other ingredients that will kind of cool the body mind as mentioned. And then the one that you're speaking of is the kapha blend, because the goji berries, and we also have ginger in those ones. The goji berries are very detoxifying and light. That will help also to reduce with all the it's a very strong, as you well know, antioxidant. Thank you.
Yep.
I was going to say something different. Antioxidant to fight the free radicals. That's what kept getting stuck in my head. So that's great for the kapha body that tends to hold that stagnation. It will hold toxins. So it really gets rid of those toxins, can lead to disease and lead to cancers and all kinds of different ailments. And so if we can detox them just a little bit every day, gently like that, that can be a great way to keep them healthy and balanced. So that's why I added it in there.
Awesome. Thank you. I can encourage people to go and take a little bit of a deeper look at those if they feel like they'd like to try a new biscuit and a balancing something. I always want to make food medicine, right? I mean, food is medicine. So if you're going to be buying treats, you might as well buy something that's going to be beneficial and not buy, crappy crap.
Yeah.
I won't name any names. I was going to name names, but I don't want to be rude. Well, okay, I'm going to name names. Milk bones. Just don't do it. They just make your dog fat and they just have no benefits whatsoever. And they are basically wheat, which of course we all know, conventionally grown wheat is heavily sprayed with glyphosate while growing and after. So no more of that. No more milk bones. Just ban
Yeah.
them.
And they're so, yeah, no, they're terrible and they don't break down easily. And yes, they deliver absolutely no nutritional value. Actually, they take away any value that's there in the body. And so, yeah, being able to bring and just paying attention to it like we do our own lives. You can eat Lay's potato chips, or you can get like oven baked, lighter, healthier oils that were used in making those potato chips. So it doesn't mean we have to eliminate potato chips from our life, but you might as well choose the healthy ones. And the dogs really enjoy them. Oh my gosh, they're crazy about the treats. At first I thought it was because they just were biased, you know, their mom, they wanted to support her, but all the dogs are crazy about these treats, and they crumble up so you can feed them to small dogs too. But yeah, in every bowl, we can see it as medicine in like lifestyle medicine, let's call it that. So we remove the association of medicine to treat a disease, and instead
Right.
medicine to help us thrive. And when we see every bowl as an opportunity to help your animal thrive, or every treat to help them thrive, we really start to see food for our animals and ourselves very differently, actually.
Yep. Yep. I mean, it can absolutely be a component of treating disease, and I'm allowed to say that because I'm a veterinarian. But so I do use food in that way. I do prescribe specific diets for issues, but
Yeah.
it is more importantly, I keep saying I just want to get myself out of a job. Not really. That's impossible. That's never going to happen. But my whole point here is that we have to prevent and the diseases in the first place. We have so much opportunity to do that. And preventative medicine is so much more than vaccines. It just is. So the food is the first thing that most people in our field and in all fields associated with wellness especially agree is the number one thing. It's like the first line of defense that we can actually make a difference because we're eating every single day, and so are our dogs. So I say that it's food, and I'm kind of leading you into this, but would you say food or something else? Is there like, what's the number one way that you can biohack your pets to help keep them healthy?
I think food certainly is a great starting point, especially for dogs, because a lot of the emotional upset that us humans experience that then has an effect on our physical body and our moods and how we live, their emotional balance is a little, let's just say a little stronger, or maybe a little more stable than ours, because they don't get wrapped up in all that drama, right? They're just like living their dog life and they're happy.
Right.
And
They're
as long
not
as they,
like worried
yeah,
about haters on social media.
totally not. And like, oh, I shouldn't have said that yesterday. They don't care, you know, they just
Yeah.
are present. And so for that reason, let's just say the mental emotional side of life doesn't influence them as much as an individual. But I will say that because they're so tied into us, especially when we have
Yep.
very close relationships with our dogs, like many of us do, and surely, you know, many can relate. When we've got a really close relationship like that, our mood is absolutely spilling over to affect them.
If you
And
didn't say it, I was going to.
yeah, and that's a big part when we talk about in Ayurveda, when we talk about environment, that's what we mean. And yes, the chemicals that you're using to clean your floor is also what we're talking about, or sprays that you're using. Every time I see Febreze online, I just like smack my forehead like, no, get rid of that product.
Right.
Animals don't need Febreze in their house. It's very sensitive to breathe all of that in all the time.
Yeah. Blech.
I digress. So, but that's not even what I'm talking about when I take into consideration the environment. I'm talking about the way our house feels, the way we feel, the way we speak to our husbands and our wives and our children, what they
Yep.
overhear when we're on a phone conversation, and the
Yep.
energy they pick up on all of that. I'll say it like this. Oftentimes I'll be working with a client and we always are, you know, it's all about dogs and they're humans. So we're always touching into the human side and kind of how things are going. But some people are a little more reluctant with that. So we typically will start with the dogs. And so we've gotten a protocol together for their meals, and we're working with the other senses. And we've got like some practices for them to do. I'm really into meditating with your dog. And so I always recommend that. But oftentimes, or let's say sometimes, not oftentimes, we will be stuck and we just can't get any further, and the dog's not getting better. And at that point, maybe I've had a couple opportunities to talk with this person. So deeper trust is built, and then we'll really start getting into their life. And when we get into their life, in these cases, almost 100% of the time, we find that things are really not okay in that household. They're in the middle of a divorce, or they're in the middle of bankruptcy, or they've just moved, or they're taking care of a senior parent that is not doing well in the home. There's just a lot of stress, and that dog is taking it in. And why dogs do that is because they have literally been genetically created, you could say, and you correct me, I am not a vet. And so I would love to hear your perspective of this, but just from my knowledge and experience and passion in all of this, I've learned that dogs obviously have been evolved from wolves to be made into our friends, our companions. Well, what does a good companion do? They support you. They take the load off. They feel what you feel. Think of your very good friends. They're not more distant from us when we're having a hard time. They're more close to us when we're having a hard time and when we need them most and when we need to lean on them. So that's what our dogs will do. They're like, hey, give it to me. So sometimes, whether it's an ailment, very common for the dog to have the same exact ailment as the person.
I talk about that too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or
I know. I need to
emotionally.
keep better notes. I need to keep more notes because I talk about that and then people want to hear examples. And I have shared on other podcasts and with other people the few examples that I can rattle off the top of my head, but there are so many.
It's wild, isn't it?
So many. And sometimes I'm a little bit nervous to ask a client, things like, for example, when more than one pet in the household is developing incontinence, I desperately want to ask, do you have incontinence? You know what I mean? But that's such a personal question to ask that it's hard. But the truth is, that's another reason for this podcast and for this platform is because you guys, you pet parents, if you're listening, you can hear this without having to have someone dig, your veterinarian or your, pet wellness coach be able to ask you about your medical history because HIPAA and all that stuff. But if you want to share it, it does sometimes help us to better treat. And also that whole point of this whole discussion is taking care of yourself is a biohacking tool for your pet.
Yes.
Our pets are a biohacking tool for us, which is the flip side, right? Our pets help keep us healthier. That has been proven in and out, over and over again in numerous studies. Pets keep you healthier, right? Especially your dog, especially dogs. And I had a client ask me the other day, do you think dogs come back again as, in another dog for us? Or do you think that they're trying to evolve to be people? And I'm like, oh, heck no, they're not trying to be people. They're better than us already. Why would they evolve to be a person? No way. They are actually angels just in fur coats here to take care of us. That's what they are. So I agree 100%. And I don't want to make anybody feel guilty. So whenever I start talking about this subject, I always worry that I'm going to make people feel guilty because a lot of times these people who are already really imbalanced will worry themselves to death over the fact that they're worrying their dog to death. And I'm like, no, stop it. Just go run and go walk and go meditate and go get into nature and maybe learn what foods you should eat and what you shouldn't and what you should watch and what you shouldn't and all of that stuff for your dog's sake. You know what I mean?
That's exactly it. You just nailed it. You just nailed it. And you really explained actually vata, you said they're like a nervous wreck and now they're worried about their dog. All those things that you just mentioned are all vata pacifying, vata balancing. And so that's exactly it. And that's what's fun about Ayurveda, from my viewpoint at least, is that when I guide people with this, they can do it too. Because very oftentimes they do share or will get to the point of oh, I'm also really anxious, or I've also been very judgy lately. I've been so reactive, or I've been bitchy, or whatever it is. Or I too have gained 5 pounds in the last month, like my dog did, and I am. So those are examples of the doshas, right? So when we see that in a dog, it's fun actually to be able to take that into our own life too and do the things together. Like you said, go outside, be in nature together, go on walks together, listen to the same music together, have the same aromas in your house together, eat the similar kind of foods together, and you will balance because you're so mirrored to one another already that it's inevitable really for you to keep reflecting that in each other.
Yep. And you even see dogs and owners start to look alike. I mean, I actually did a Pecha Kucha talk on this. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's like similar to a TED talk. It's an international speaking organization that puts on little get-togethers or presentations all over the place, but you have to have a picture with each, like for every 30 seconds or something. So it was very challenging to be in line with the pictures because I couldn't see them on the screen while I was talking. But the whole talk is about the connection between our pets and ourselves and how pets will develop the same ailments or develop the human's ailments. Sometimes even before. I say that they're like a canary in a coal mine, right? They're that sentinel species. They can show you things about yourself before you even really physically develop those issues. And if you're willing to look at it and you're willing to take that into consideration, you can heal yourself and you can heal your pet through healing yourself and through these other tools and techniques that we've been talking about for this last hour.
Yeah.
So thank you.
It.
Yeah,
you're welcome. I love it. This is
I love it.
Totally. What this is taking guardianship of animals to the next level, because if we're going to do it, we're having them here in our home, we've domesticated these beings. There's so much more to get out of the relationship, vice versa, both ways, than we think. And especially at a time like this, I'll just say that to close, especially a time like this where we are struggling. Most of us are struggling. I mean, all of us are being affected. We're in our houses. We're spending more time with our animals than ever before. And maybe we're a bit more imbalanced than we normally are. And so now we get the time and the space and maybe an opportunity to be able to work co-creatively in this way and see how we can heal. And have fun with it. Like you said, don't worry, don't feel bad about it. Instead, just be like, wow, this was great. I learned so many ways that I can take care of myself and my animals, and I'm going to do it. I'm getting to it right now. And you can.
Yep. I love how you prescribe meditation with your dog, because absolutely that calming will help the pet, but also like it's totally for the person.
Yeah.
Which is so great. I just love that.
We
awesome.
Create them now. I don't know if you've seen those, but we create a new one every week and we send it out. Yeah. And they're specific for the animal and the person. And so they're like this week rather, the one we recorded last week was about the human-canine bond. So that's what we talk a little bit in the beginning about that, and just kind of bring us into the essence and then have that silent space together. Yeah. So healing.
That's really great. Amanda, thank you. I really appreciate you being here today and all of the tools that you've helped us to, or reminded us or taught us about, depending on where you are in your journey here. Some of us need reminding. We always need reminding, but some of us, just need inspiration. Sometimes this is new for some people. So where can people find you and get reminded again and learn more about everything that you do?
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And thank you to everyone who's taken the time to listen and to care for your animals in the way you do. It means everything. And where you can learn more is our website, samadog.com. When you do the quiz, to speak specifically to doshas, when you do the quiz, you'll receive an email afterwards. And there's a link right there to a page on our website with all kinds of free resources. So it'll show right there for vata, pitta, and kapha, what are several things that you can do starting today to help your dog, and you'll have links and things there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then once a month also we do what we call Sama Saturday, where a wonderful holistic vet from here in San Diego named Dr. Katie Kangas, she joins us and we discuss an array of topics. I think our last one was herbs and supplements. Prior to that, it was seniors and aging and grief and loss. So we touch on all kinds of different things and we bring other experts with us. We'd love to have you on sometime if you'd like to be with us. We'll talk about that. And
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I would love to have you. And so that's a free show once a month, and we have the recording there that people can listen to, and that's on our Facebook and our YouTube. We're active on social, so
okay. And I will put all of these in the show notes as well, so you can click on the links, but it's samadog.com. So SAMADOG.com, right?
Yep.
Okay. Amanda, I want to be, respectful of your time, and our hour is up, but I so appreciate you and the work that you're doing in the world. And This is fun. This is cool.
Oh.
I'm so excited to go try some of these things like right now, like just like you just said. I'm like, yes, what can I do? What's first?
Oh, well, thank you so much. And first of all, I just love the energy and like the alignment that we share in our, like, I can't even tell you how many times during our conversation that we just had that I was like, oh, I should say this. And then you said it. It was like 10 times in what we just talked about. So
yep, same.
It's very special when you find kindred spirits in this world, whether it's in your personal world, in your friendships, or if it's in your business world. And it feels so good to be able to connect and to share a message. And of course, from my perspective, when a veterinarian, some people are very stuck in that, like, I only listen to vets mindset. And so when you support and encourage these same guidelines and suggestions, like it makes such a difference to me personally, and like gives me faith in myself, and it really supports people taking it in. And so I just love it. That felt so great. And I thank you, truly.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'm not one of those, like, not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, thank God for those vets, but I am not one who is only holistic. Everything has to be natural. You can't ever use flea products or anything like that. I mean, heck, I live in Florida. I'm realistic here. I'm logical. We have to consider our quality of life. We do everything we can to keep them healthy. And that's why you need some detox and stuff when you have to use some of these other things. But like, it is important for us to do everything that we can to keep our pets healthy from the beginning and not have to struggle with all of the potential illnesses. I mean, I don't know very many pets who are actually just totally healthy and balanced. Honestly, that's the sad thing. I mean, if they're already mostly unhealthy, even as young little puppies, God, I hate it. I hate seeing all the allergies. And
their mom's microbiome was poor. And so they didn't get it from the start.
Yep. So it really, you can't start too soon. So just learn everything you can. And we're here to support you, pet parents and other veterinarians or pet professionals who might be listening. Like, we are all about collaboration, not competition. We just can't get this word out enough. We need to spread it and empower pet parents and educate pet parents on all of the very easy and somewhat totally free and sometimes very inexpensive, tools that they have right at their fingertips that they can do themselves or that they can get help with when needed. So thank you, Amanda.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the beautiful
work.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.